All right, we're going to start on working the order of operations. And everybody kind of knows this whole idea of PEMDAS, but I see a lot of people make mistakes around PEMDAS just because they're not really sure what's a grouping and making the mistake that you're going to do multiplication and then division. There's a whole bunch of little things that can kind of really mess people up. So I'm going to go through the whole process, and we have a bunch of examples that I'll run through, but I wanted to make certain that folks know we have parentheses or brackets, exponents, multiplication and division, and then addition and subtraction. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to do all the calculations within a grouping symbol, and that means parentheses and brackets. Most people know about those and are pretty okay with that. Once you start talking square roots with an expression underneath the root, an absolute value, numerators and denominators of fractions, those are all groupings as well. And we're going to start with the innermost first. And sort of like if you know those little Russian dolls, you have the littlest one and then you keep, putting the next biggest one around it. That's what I mean. The innermost is the little baby one. So we're going to address exponents, which includes roots, square roots, cube roots, those kinds of things. Not many people know it, but if you were to take 4 and raise it to the 1/2 power, it's going to give you a 2, which is exactly the same thing as if you had taken the square root. If you took 27 and raised it to the 1/3, you would wind up with 3, because a cube root of 27 will get you 3. 3 times 3 times 3 will get you that 27. Next, we're going to do the multiplication and division, and we're going to go from left to right, and we're doing them at the same time. We don't do one pass and then the other. We're doing both at the same time. So if you bump into division first, that's what you do first, and you're going to do all of that multiplication and division at the same time. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go through and do the addition and subtraction. Again, from left to right, all at the same time. We're not going to do addition and then subtraction. We have to do it all at the same time. Okay, so let's take a look. I've got a bunch of examples here. We've got 9 of them. Let's see if we can run through them quick. Here I've got 3 plus 18 divided by 6 minus 3. Well, real quickly, I don't have any parentheses. I don't have any exponents. So here I have, the first thing I have is my multiplication and division. So I'm going to just bring along my other numbers. I've got a 3 plus, 18 divided by 6 is going to be a 3. And then I'm going to subtract 3 from that. That's this piece here. So I'm going to wind up with 6 minus 3, which is 3. All right. Our next example, we've got 8 multiplying the quantity of 5 minus 3, and that's cubed, and then we subtract 20 from that. So I'm going to take this one step at a time, usually the best way to go about it. So I'm going to take that 8, and I'm going to take that 5 minus 3, that's a 2. And then I'm going to have that cube still on there. Can't drop that cube. We haven't done anything with it yet. And then we're going to subtract that 20. So here I have 8 times the cube of 2. Well, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So I have an 8 times an 8 minus 20. So I have a 64 minus 20, and my 20, that's going to give me a 44 when I subtract that 20. All right, so here I have one of the cases where I have groupings where we have to deal with the innermost first. I have my 10 multiplying this whole thing, and if you look inside of that whole thing, there's this equation or this quantity that we have to address, and then there's this thing on the end that we're going to deal with. So here I'm going to have 10 and I'm going to do my square bracket so we can just kind of see where everything is, minus 4, and then that's going to be 8 minus 3, or 8 minus 5 is going to give me a 3. There we go. And then I'm going to add a negative 6. And again, I could have done a subtract 6 because if I change the operation and I change the sign, that's fine. I'm allowed to do that. So here I'm going to go 10, and my square bracket is going to be a 7, and then minus 12 because I've got my 4 times the 3 there. That's the only multiplication I have going on there. Whoops, I want a square bracket. And then I'm going to go with a minus 6 just because, I mean, writing the double signs is kind of silly. If you need to, then go ahead and do it, but I'm kind of at the point where it's like, generally speaking, I can do it without messing up too badly. All right, so here I've got my 10 is multiplying that negative 5, right, because I have 7 minus 12. That's going to be a negative 5. And then I'm going to subtract 6 from that. So it's going to get more negative. So I have a negative 50 minus 6. That's a 0, I should say. And so my answer is going to be a negative 56. All right. So again, here I've got a lot going on. I've got a lot of multiplication and addition, and there's an exponent in there, and there's this grouping. So let's just kind of jump in. All right. So first thing I have is I have my grouping here. So I have 5 times 3 plus 8 times 3 squared, which is my exponent, plus 4 times, well, I have 6 minus 2, that's going to give me a 4. So now I go ahead and I've gone as far as I can go with this piece. So now I go ahead and I'm going to go back and pick up my exponent. So I've got 5 times 3 plus 8 times 9 plus 4 times 4, which means I'm going to have, now I can go ahead and do my multiplication. I've got 15 plus 72 plus 16. Now, you're totally welcome to go ahead and add this straight across. Now, I tend to look for, is there a way I can make this a little easier on myself? Keeping in mind that I have the commutative property of addition to work with. So I'm going to rewrite this. And this is strictly my preference, okay? This is a preference thing. So here I'm going to have 15 plus my 16 plus the 72. This is going to get me a 31 plus 72, which means I have 103. All right. And before we go too far, I do want to point out that this set of numbers and this set of numbers are identical except for where the paren is. So in this paren or in this place is the paren. And I wanted to do that so I can show you how vastly different the results are if we make a mistake in our order of operations. I'm going to try and do them both properly, but assuming that one of those was an error, it'll show how dramatically different they can be. All right, so here I have my 5 is multiplying everything inside these parentheses. I don't have any inner parentheses. I don't have anything else inside there. So I can go ahead and deal with my exponent. So I'm going to have 5 times 3 plus 8 times 9 plus 24 minus 2. And that's actually, maybe I should back that up a step. I should have done the 6, 4 times 6. So 4 times 6 minus 2. Now I'm going to go ahead and do basically my multiplication, and then I'm going to go from there. So I've got 5 multiplying the 3 plus, this is 72, plus 24 minus 2. All right. So here, if I take a look here, I've got 75. So I'm going to have 5 times 75 plus 24 minus 2. So 5 times 99 minus 2, which is 5 times 97. Now, I'm going to show you 2 different additional ways to do this other than the regular, just straight old multiplying like the traditional way. So here's something that's called the lattice multiplication, and I'm going to do a whole separate video on that, so don't freak out about it if you're not getting it quite right away. So I'm going to have there's my 97, right? I'm going to have 2 boxes for my 97. So there's the 9, there's the 7. And then I am going to multiply this by 5. And here's the trick. The tens place, when I multiply the numbers together, the tens place goes in the top triangle, and then the ones goes in the bottom triangle, and then we're going to add along the diagonal when we're done. And I realize right now that doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense, but I want to make certain I at least address it, and then we'll go into more depth in the video that I put up about this. So 7 times 5 is 35. There's my 3 on top, my 5 down below. Here I have my 5 times 9 is 45. So now I'm going to add along the diagonal. This diagonal, I only have 5. I have 3 plus 5. That's going to get me 8. And then I have a 4. All right. So this is my answer right here, this 485. Now, when I have to think about this stuff, that's a way to do it. When I have to think about this stuff and I'm trying to do it in my head, and that's not always a good idea, but when I try and do it in my head, I wind up thinking in terms of 5 times, this is really close to 100, so I'm going to go 100, and then I'm going to subtract from what the 100, I'm going to subtract the 97, so I'm going to have 5 times 3. So that's going to give me a 500 minus 15, which is going to give me 485. Now I'm going to stop this and then restart just so that we have, so I don't go way long on this one.